Water. Very important to have water. Today we're going to talk about Isaac and Ishmael and Jesus from Genesis 21 and 22. And this represents something I think is a sad chapter in the life of Abraham, but a beautiful chapter in the redemptive power of our living God and the love and compassion of our living God. And in this chapter, we're going to talk about the birth of Isaac and what happened to poor Hagar and her son Ishmael, and then what God does with the redeeming value of Isaac and Abraham and almost a prophetic imagery of the coming Jesus and his sacrifice on the cross. So, good morning. I'm Pastor Rini, Senior Pastor of Valley Christian Center. Welcome to 747 Morning Inspiration. It might be a little noisy today with background noise because I'm getting some gutters repaired and fixed on my house from the storm. So those noises in the background, just ignore them. But don't ignore me. All right, so let's talk about it. Chapter 21, Genesis, the birth of Isaac. Abraham's 100 years old. It says, the Lord visited Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did to Sarah as he had promised. And Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age, and at the time which God had spoken to him. Abraham called the name of his son who was born to him, and whom Sarah bore him, Isaac, which means laughter, to laugh. I think if I were 100 years old, I would laugh too. So I think that's pretty funny. And then he circumcised him and everything else. All right, so he has this son. And now Sarah finally has a son. However, remember Sarah asked her husband Abraham to have a child through Hagar, his female bondservant. So she was a slave. And because of that, now he has another son. And the other son, Ishmael, is also now competition to Sarah and her son Isaac. It says in verse 8 that as the child grew and was weaned, this is Isaac, Abraham made a great feast on the day that Isaac was weaned. But Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, laughing. In other words, making fun of her son. So she said to Abraham, cast out this slave woman with her son, for the son of the slave woman shall not be heir with my son Isaac. And the thing was very displeasing to Abraham on account of the son. So it's not fair, but suddenly Hagar and Ishmael are competitors to her son Isaac. Be not displeased because of the boy. But God said to Abraham, so God's speaking to Abraham because his wife wants her gone. Do not be displeased because of the boy and because of your slave woman. Whatever Sarah says, do, for through Isaac shall be the offspring be named. And I will make a great nation of the son of the slave woman, because he is your offspring. So Abraham rose early in the morning and took bread in a skin of water and gave it to Hagar, putting it on her shoulder, along with a child, and sent her away, and she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. Okay, just think about how unfair this is, right? Sarah asked Hagar to have a son with her husband. Now she has a son. She wants him and that boy gone. And now Abraham sends her into the desert with a child, with a piece of bread, and a wine skin full of water. That's it. And it seems incredibly unfair. By the way, when Pastor Christy and I were in Cambodia, in the jungles of Cambodia, there was this horrible ritual where the tribal people would get different wives, and every time they get a new wife, they would ostracize the old wife and the old children. And so there were these orphan widows, they called them orphan widows with children, throughout the jungle of Southeast Asia, because in their religion at that time, they could not support the old family, they had to support the new family. So this was something that's been in our ancestry, unfortunately. They cast away the other wife with the other children for the new wife for the new children. And so God has compassion. It says, verse 15, when the water in the skin was gone, she put the child under one of the bushes. Then she went and sat down opposite him a good way off, about a distance of a bow shot. For she said, let me not look on the death of the child. And as she sat opposite him, she lifted up her voice and wept. And God heard the voice of the boy. And an angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, What troubles you? Fear not. God has heard the voice where your boy is. Lift up the boy, for I will make him a great nation. And then she sees a big well of water that she had not seen, and he supplies for them, and she is protected and her lineage preserved by God. And it says, verse 20, and God was with a boy, and he grew up. He lived in the wilderness and became an expert with a bow. He lived in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took a wife for him from the land of Egypt. Many believe that, Muslims especially believe that from him is the lineage that led to Muhammad, which they worship as a prophet. So there are many Muslims who believe that he was the forefather of the Arab nations, and he was a descendant of Muhammad. Okay, and this is, of course, conjecture, but this is what they believe. Let me move down to chapter 22, the sacrifice of Isaac, because this is another part that seems really unfair, really confusing. God asked Abraham to sacrifice his son. And he says in verse 2 of chapter 22, take your son, your only son, Isaac. I want you to begin to see the imagery and the symbolism of Christ, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I shall tell you. So something is going on where God is saying, I need you now to be willing to sacrifice your only son. In today's world and our Western thought, it's ridiculous. A thought that we would never even consider. But remember, this was many, many ages ago. Christ had not yet come. They were confused with their relationship with God, and God is trying to help Abraham see something greater than himself, because he's going to use Isaac to do a mighty work. Okay, he takes Isaac with him, goes, gets some firewood, and he places, he's about to place Isaac on the altar, and it says, God will provide, and he tells his son, because the son says, hey, Dad, where's the lamb or where's the ram to offer? And he says, verse 8, God will provide for himself the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. So they both went together. Verse 9, when they came to the place of which God had told him, Abraham built an altar and laid the wood in order to bound Isaac and his son, and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. So he's literally bound his own son, put him on the altar, about to sacrifice his son. Again, today, through our Western eyes, insanity. Absolute insanity. The guy should be put away. This was thousands of years ago, a confused people. They were confused with who God was, and God is trying to show him something while preserving the story so it helps us remember what God did with his son Jesus. Okay, so he's on the altar. And then it says, verse 10, Abraham reached out his hand, took the knife to slaughter his son, but an angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, here I am. And he said, do not lay your hand on the boy or do anything to him, for now I know that you fear God, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. Abraham looks up, there's a ram in the thicket, and they sacrifice this lamb instead of his son. And then it says, verse 15, I want you to hear all this because this is very important. And the angel of the Lord called to Abraham a second time from heaven and said, by myself I have sworn, declares the Lord. I love that statement, right? People say swear to God. God says, I swear to me. I have to swear. God can only swear to himself. By myself I have sworn, declares the Lord, because you have done this and not withheld your son, your only son. He's making a point. Only son. This is so when Jesus came and God says, this is my only son, they remember the sacrifice. I will surely bless you, and I will surely multiply your offspring as the stars of the heaven, as the sand that is on the seashore. And listen, and your offspring shall possess the gate of his enemies, of his enemies. Your offspring shall possess the gate of his enemies. When we receive Jesus Christ, right? He sends us to take back the enemy's territory. We are called as saints in Jesus to go break through the gates of hell and take back the territory of the enemy. Verse 18, and in your offspring shall all nations of the earth be blessed because you have obeyed my voice. Just as Abraham had to obey God so Isaac could be the father of many nations, we obey the voice of God because we accept the sacrifice of his son, Jesus, his only son, Jesus. And because we have his only son, Jesus, we are empowered to take back right to the gates of hell and take back the territory the enemy has stolen. It's not a defensive, but an offensive by the people of God. Verse 19, so Abraham returned to his young men, and they arose and went together to Beersheba, and Abraham lived at Beersheba. So what do we see? First of all, we see that God protects those who have had kind of a bad hand dealt to them, right? Hagar and Ishmael deserved better from Sarah. She got jealous, and they were about to die. And God preserved the water and bread and took care of Hagar and her son Ishmael so that they would not die. And because he was a descendant from Abraham, there was some lineage that was protected. So no matter how bad a hand you get dealt by the world, you call out to God, he will defend you. He is your defender. Very important. And secondly, there is only one sacrifice we need to remember. The one single sacrifice. God sacrificed his only son. His only son. Because God sacrificed his only son, that is the one that we call out to, that is the one that we worship, and that is the one that we serve. Anyway, that's it for today. Tell me what you think. What are your thoughts about Ishmael? What are your thoughts about how God treated them? I would really love to know. And post those in the comments below. Make sure you hit the like button. Share this video with others. Let me pray for you. Father, I thank you for this day. I thank you for my brothers and sisters. Let them go out in peace, knowing that it's Jesus Christ, the Son of God, whom they serve. And we will see you tomorrow morning at what time? 7:47. By the way, if you're not doing anything tonight, I'll be at Breaking Free Revival Center, Pastor Jimmy Foote. We're having a prayer time there. I'll be also one of the prayer guys praying over the congregation. So we'll see you tonight at Breaking Free Revival. If you want to join us in the fasting and prayer time, go online at Valley Christian Center's website and you'll get the whole schedule. Love you all. See you tomorrow morning.